answer any questions at the June 2nd meeting, if you have any. So, uh, were there any concerns that you guys saw as you looked through here? This is very similar to Chase and Davis. And again, the annexation won't take effect till January of 2027 because of the change in the fire districts. So, if every,
Driving range. A lot of threats of fire in that driving range, and crime is high.
all right. Kelly, you've had this also, haven't you, to review it? This one,
It was kind of a lot of money. Yeah. Really
exactly.
consequential.
All right, so is everyone in agreement to move this forward? Anybody opposed to moving this to the January 2nd meeting?
June.
June the 2nd, that's right, we're starting in the middle of the year this time, okay. My mistake. Okay, we'll move this to the June 2nd meeting. All right, second thing on the agenda is the Storyville Apartments. I assume you guys are together. Come on up where the microphone is. They're at the table. And
Hi, I'm Keith Johnson, who was filling in for Oscar Gutierrez, who had a flight delay. So,
Straight from the airport, sorry.
so I haven't had the chance to meet all of you yet, but I know you have met Oscar in the development. So we are just getting started. I just handed out site plan, and this is John Kilmer with BCA.
John, what's your last name, John?
Kilmer, Kilmer.
Kilmer, okay.
And from the top of the stairs, forgive me, Mr. President, that's who I thought you were as John was coming up.
Oh,
I said, "Oh,
okay.
hi," and you're like, "No."
That's better than some of the people I've been mistaken for, so I'll go with that. It's quite all right. And what was your name again?
Keith Johnson.
Keith Johnson? Okay, and then Oscar
Gutierrez.
Gutierrez. Thank you.
So we brought a few pictures of what the apartments will be looking like from the architect, and then you have the latest site plan, hot off the press. So we are talking about phase one of the development, three-page building. But did you or the city want to introduce the pilot or the actual resolution first, or does this count as your introduction?
Well, what I'd like to do is, I believe everyone got your ordinance. Kelly sent it over to us. I've sent it to all the council members. And it does show the proposal for your pilot in there. So if you guys want to kind of run us through your ordinance as far as if there's any questions in the ordinance, they can ask them. But if you can run through how you determined the amount of pilot and the length of time and all that for us,
Yeah,
we'd
no,
appreciate
I
it.
can take that. So pilot is a tool that is only allowed in the state for two different entities. One is for this type of development, which is workforce housing, or any affordable housing for that matter, as long as it has federal funds. And then the other one is for municipally owned utilities, where the utility can pay a pilot to the city
Right.
in order to support itself. So those are the only two instances in which this is allowed. So this is why you haven't seen it before.
We have, our utilities does pay us a pilot.
Yeah, I mean with the housing, so yeah, so you're familiar that it's just a payment in lieu of taxes.
Yeah.
We could have asked for an abatement, we could have asked for TIF, and seems like the path of least resistance, where we're not paying for a bunch of advisors and lawyers to do a TIF bond and then ask for the money and then do all of that. We could, but this is a easier, more economical way of doing it, rather than paying advice to the lawyers, of asking TIF. It is also a little bit better than an abatement, because we're paying you a little bit of something, and the money that we do pay goes into a fund that can only be used towards housing initiatives, whatever that may be.
In our city or in that
Your city.
area?
Yeah, you guys will hold the funds, and then you can use it for whatever you would like.
Okay, you
The
said,
other key reason is this helped us win the project.
Helped you what?
In the state, win. So this counted
As
toward.
points.
As points to be rewarded the project.
Well, I did wonder, so do you have an account that's ever been set up like this before? Because I think it would require a new account when I read through
It
this.
says something about a trust fund.
yeah, we don't have anything set up at this time. The only, we have a pilot, but it's fed into funds that we already have. This would, I assume, be something completely separate.
Yeah, you would-
Would have to be designated.
Well,
Like
and
you
we'll work
said.
with your attorney to set up the agreement on what that fund will look like and your city clerk, treasurer.
So you guys did all this before you came and asked us if we'd approve it or not? And what happens if we say no to the pilot?
The project goes away. The project. It's part of the agreement that we had with the state that
When you filled out that application,
we discussed this, but
we didn't. This is the first I've heard a pilot for this.
we,
Well, you did discuss abatement. So that's what we were all thinking when this came to us before.
I agree with that, but with an abatement, I'm just curious. I mean, it's all right. I mean, I just think it's odd that you would go out on a limb before you come and ask us if we're okay with a pilot.
I might agree with that. This is the common, they're used to this, they're used to seeing this. It's used in the deals that ICDA awards. It's the most common mechanism to check the box and get the points.
Okay, all right.
But I hear you.
Dave, if you gave them abatement, then we wouldn't be getting any money. So,
That's not true either.
yeah, if you gave them abatement for 10 years. This,
I do both, ma'am.
It depends on what kind of an abatement we gave them. I mean, there's a,
Oh.
like we just gave a personal property abatement where they get a percentage. They don't pay it all, they just pay a percentage, but
We couldn't do both. We couldn't do TIF. We
I
couldn't-
understand from reading this that you can't do both. I've got that now. I'm just saying, previously, we talked about abatement, and I just presumed it would be like the other abatements that we've looked at for different businesses, so. And this says this is only for when you have funded housing. That's what this is about. It's because we're doing funded housing, so.
I understand that.
Okay.
You maybe could have prepared this earlier when you had your prior vote, had it been part of the package yet.
We weren't trying to be
Sorry,
mischievous or dubious about this. It's sort of,
No, that's really the gist. And John was there just in case we wanted to cover any more of the environmental.
well, honestly, I mean, I'm curious how you came up with your number. I mean,
it's usually, they usually do $100 per unit is what most municipalities, most of the ICDA deals, they just do $100 per unit. It's how it typically gets done.
and they don't typically care what the value of this property is or anything like that.
No, because the rents are so low that it's the only way that these cash flow, because it already has federal money, it has state money, and then there's still a gap. So it just be operated, we would have to raise rents, which we can't. So the only way to make it work is by cutting the expenses. This doesn't really cash flow very much money. So we make money on the construction and the development of it all. The actual asset doesn't generate a lot of money because, I mean, we're not really charging hardly any money to run it. So if we tack on additional expenses like a high property tax value, that just makes the project be upside down. And if we can't generate the revenues to operate it, we can't run it. I mean, it's really more about the operations sustainability than the construction piece. Because every year, we have to hire, maintenance, the management company. We are providing washers, dryers, internet. So we're providing a lot of services with these units as part of the affordability that the individuals that pay barely covers the expenses. So when you start adding additional, it just doesn't work. So that's why it's done that way.
Common formula that the state looks at and that the funders that make these deals work, that they,
Otherwise, they wouldn't approve it, then they know it won't cash flow. That's why the points are there.
Provide them with internet? Huh,
We have to,
okay.
we don't, I mean, I would like to cut that, but the state makes you.
Okay.
It's a lot of requirements that we have to do. I mean, we have to make it, have so many units be ADA accessible. We have to provide washers and dryers in the units. We have to provide a lot of things because otherwise I mean, anybody can just put up a house there with an empty shell and start charging and nickel and diming it. But we are restricted to the total amount that we can charge and include all of these things. So, and this is all federally ran and mandated. And the state did match the federal funds to make it work, and we still have about a $7 million gap that we'll have to finance.
7 what?
$1 million gap that we are personally financing, and then that has to be paid back through the operations. So,
For this project?
yeah, so it's over $20 million, but $7 million we still have to finance out of pocket and pay with a very limited operational margin, because there are two types of developments. There's a 9% and a 4%.
Right.
And we only got a 4%.
You only got the 4% for this one, right? Okay. You're not worried about any of this changing with the present administration?
I couldn't answer that, but I don't think that they could take the funds away once they've already been awarded to the state. They're under state management, so they would have to come and take them in the next 18 months from the state. Possible, but I think,
Okay.
More worried about future rounds.
yeah.
As you should be.
It's a need across the country, so I'd like to think that they would be cognizant that there's not enough rooftops for this new generation, so but you never know. I don't want to speculate on national matters.
So, tell me exactly what all goes into figuring out whether you can, I mean, I'm still intrigued by how the formula works that gets you to the point where you say generally it's $100 a unit. You know, 'cause I don't know, I remember back to when you guys come and you promised this and you promised that. And tell me a little bit about what's in your drawing for the phase one here.
So for the phase one, you have 3 buildings, which is a retention pond, and there'll be some amenities. Phase 2, we're gonna go back to the state for a potential, again, for the 9%. We lost it by a half a point. They took away our points for public transportation because they didn't, they wanted to see a closer point to the site. We're going to address that next time. But, so we had to change what we had before to ensure that everything in the site would look nice, whether the phase 2 happens or does not happen, which we firmly believe it will. But we had to shift everything to the west side of the site, and we had to reformat the buildings. So the buildings were originally much larger, but we had to make them smaller in order to build the site in a more cohesive manner that kind of flows with the entire neighborhood.
And this includes a daycare?
The daycare was part of the 9%.
Doesn't come in this one, it
I
comes.
thought we were told the daycare was happening no matter which phase we got.
If we got phase 1, well, we only had phase 1 and phase 2. Now we have phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 because we were only awarded one of the 2 applications. That typically doesn't happen where the state splits it. There is no daycare because there's no funding for the daycare. The 9% provides the funding for the daycare, so the state would have paid for the daycare to be created.
Okay.
So without the state funding it, or the federal government funding the daycare, there's really no funds to fund it. I mean, we can barely make this one work because it's so much smaller.
So when are you going to reapply for the 9% on phase two?
We are looking at potentially July, or as this project is going under construction, so that we can time it, so that one wraps up and then the other one begins. So we're looking at the scoring right now that came out about a month ago, and we can still apply. We have until July, but we're trying to get through this one first and then come back again, so that because the state, we still haven't closed with the state. We have to close all our financing with them by November. So if we haven't closed with them and we apply for a new one, that might raise questions to them. So if we can get all of our financing in place by July, we'll apply this year. If not, then we'll apply next July of 26 for the 9%. And then by the time that gets awarded, this one will be wrapping up, and then the next one will be getting built. But it's hard to ask them for a new one when we haven't technically gotten to finish it. Until we have everything, until we issue bonds with the state, we have our financing in place, we have should be the last step for underwriting. We can't go back to them and say, we're ready for number 2 when we haven't technically finished number 1.
Well, how many other people will be applying for that same money before we have the opportunity? Excuse me?
Oh, it's on an annual, so they do annual allocations. Every year they do a new set of money. So even if we don't apply in 25 and all that money gets taken, a new set of funds get allocated from the federal government.
Okay, thank you.
Now, your question about what if that goes away, that is the risk. If, nationally they take away this program, but, we haven't, there hasn't been any conversations around that yet, so.
You applied, how many apartments was there supposed to be in this phase one?
We were looking at 120, I believe. So we're down to 74.
And so can you kind of walk me through this thing and tell me what's what on here? I mean, I apologize, I'm old, I can't read.
No, you're
I mean, I guess a question for Keith or John is, so we got 2 retention ponds and they're going to be safe after how deep are these retention ponds going to be that we're going to dig on the Trelleborg site?
we have to have one.
I can get you the specific depth. If you give me a minute. While John looks it up.
We haven't looked at this, this is relatively new, but, so we're like one version behind. The version behind still has a detention pond in the same location as the one in the southeast there. So, and David Scoble, our project manager, has dug into that and reviewed our data regarding what's there and says that's just fine. The technical details we were concerned with really have less to do with contamination than with effect on groundwater flow or related things like that. But that's an important question because we wouldn't want to dig in a contaminated area, not so much because of the exposure to contamination, but because of the effect on the price. Because all that soil would have been hauled off to the landfill. Instead, they're digging the clean area, which means the soil that they're digging up is safe for whatever they want to use it for.
So you say you knew the one on the southeast was going to be there, but you don't know about the one on the southwest?
I'm not sure of that.
One of them is
Southeast, yes.
Dry basin. Yep.
Now, are they both serving as active stormwater detention ponds? So the one in the southeast, we've already checked and examined, not sure of the one on the west yet.
Are there still open places where you're going to be testing for the extended future?
Yes, there are a number of monitoring wells throughout the site, and a few of them just off of the site that are part of a long-term monitoring that may yet go on for a couple, or a few years.
Okay. So we've got apartment all the way to the west there. What kind of an apartment building is it? Is it 3 stories, 2 stories, 4, 3 stories? And there's how many people in the one on the west?
24
24?
per building.
And then what are all the little squares between the 2 retention ponds?
Those will be amenities, so basketball court, the playground, that type of thing. I'm not sure that they're labeled here yet. They're just allotted for amenities. So we have to put amenities around the facility. And I believe our architect's still figuring out how to maximize the space, but those will be amenity spaces.
And so are all these buildings basically the same size and,
No, two are the same size, and one is slightly bigger because it has a built-in office.
okay?
lease.
Which one is that? Is that the center one there?
That's the first one, when you first pull in, that one, no?
Yeah, it's the center one.
Yeah, the third one. I'm still looking at the old site plan. Our architect keeps trying to make it efficient for maximizing the parking and avoiding contamination, so we are on latest version. I believe that this is, I think this just changed late
Yeah,
last week.
This afternoon.
Okay.
Okay.
You said there are 24 units per apartment?
You said there's 24 on the very west one. I was just going to ask that same question. So how many units are in the other 2 buildings?
There are
Center
72,
building.
So, yeah, yep, 24 per.
24 per building. The
And
one
but
that's
then-
slightly bigger is just because it's office space for
Okay, so all of them have 24.
units, yes.
Okay.
Access roads are gonna be off of, what is it, Tacoma,
South and west.
and then off of, what is that, part of the old General Tire Road, Jacob, that they're coming in on that other part?
Not looking at it right now, but copies for everybody.
Washington Street is right here underneath Park Phase 3.
I think it's general, right?
Yes,
Yeah, General Street,
Woodland.
okay.
General there from the west side. I think it'll be right here.
And how many parking
Street
spaces?
gonna be improved at all? I mean, Woodland is a pretty small street there.
I believe it's 126 spaces.
126. So what's 72 times 2? 144. Say that again, how many?
We believe that 126 are required by the city.
Okay.
It's like 1.5 or something per
I don't
unit
know the
or,
formula of how they arrived at
Yeah,
that.
I
That's
don't-
the city requirement, so we're
yeah,
just reading
I'm not sure what it is, but it's something like that.
And we have had discussions about Woodlawn in general.
Yeah, it's, so, and you were telling me, Keith, that phase 2 and 3 are gonna be all grass. You're gonna do that at the same time?
Only phase 2. Phase 3 is technically not contaminated, and it's a different site and parcel altogether, so we're doing what we can to remediate the contaminated site, which is phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 3, there's no contamination there, and that parcel, those parcels are still staying as they are. But 1 and 2, will be all grass, or phase 2 will be grass.
While you're doing, when you do phase 1, phase 2 will be
Grass.
turned into grass. And you're gonna leave the asphalt on phase 3?
That's,
We'll probably need to do a little bit of work on it.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. Are you gonna like take this old fence all down and,
Yeah.
we haven't really contemplated what to do with phase 3, because those will end up being townhomes, and that'll be the last portion of this. And they'll be more consistent with the look and feel of everything else around the neighborhood.
Will each phase have a different name?
Currently, yes, so we are we had two different names because there were two different applications.
We have a
Right.
vote for a new name.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to rename
I
it.
liked the second name. The Flats on, was it the Flats on General or?
Yeah.
General, it was something with the word general in it.
Yeah, we can name it anything at this point. This is just a name for the state, so
Does Storyville mean, what was the reason?
it was my son's grandfather's restaurant that he owned in Alabama.
Oh, okay.
So just, and he had a hoodie that they sell online that, old college bars, and it was like, okay, well, we can honor your grandfather by naming this, but honestly, it doesn't matter. We can name it anything. It was just trying to come up with something as a plug number thing, and that it's fresh to mind. But he had just got in there. I'm like, we'll just call it this. There was no deep thought behind it. But Flats on General could. We did create the limited partnership for the development, so we would just have to change that. But it's just paperwork, so it shouldn't be a problem. If that is.
Well, it's not just me,
Yeah, no, I'm happy. We can call it, if there's something that you guys want to think about and give
Local
us.
significance, yeah.
Yeah, we're happy to do it. It's not, there was no thought given to the names, I'll say that.
Clearly.
Well, it was just for an application.
Well, I don't know if I want to be on your ship, but before the meeting, I was on her ship. I don't know now.
But I'm happy to, just, if there's anything regarding trains or depot or Flats on General or anything regarding the streets or something meaningful to the city, we are happy to change it. This is the time to do it if we're going to do it. We haven't done any marketing yet. Once we start doing the logos and the marketing and start putting stuff out, then it's a little more difficult. But right now, we would just let the state know that at the request of the city, we're changing the name, and they'll be fine. But, I'm open to suggestions. I'm not sure you guys are going to solve that here today, but,
Good Flats on General.
yeah, we can,
That just sounds
Flats
classy.
on General.
Flats on General, that sounds classy.
we can just flip the names. It's just the way it was awarded, and
Well, I hate for them to have to do a lot of work, so if we're going to
Right,
change it, let's do
absolutely.
it now.
it.
But again, if there's something better for the city that would,
Yeah.
something about that side of town or.
You guys give it some thought, and why don't you guys take, maybe like a week to think about it, and let me know what you come up with, and we're happy to make the changes. We have no problem with that.
Okay.
Is there a long-term plan for the railroad property to the north becoming?
If we could buy it, it would be a possibility.
Yeah, CSX is not a fun group to work with.
Pardon?
CSX is not fun to work with.
Yeah.
Not in the immediate future, sir.
That's one of Jacob's projects, trying to acquire that right of way. So the traffic is going to flow out of the parking lot towards Tacoma, which is eventually going to flow through the other parking lot? Is that the basic outline right now?
So if you see this little curve at the end, that's where the flow will eventually go through back around.
And there's a vacant parcel here as well.
That we can
Could be
use.
potentially for the latter phase.
Right, right.
And to tie your first point up in a bow, so it's like commonly used formula, the $100 per unit, and that is, the state blessed it, counted it, and then when we're awarded the credits, there's a broader industry that finances and buys, makes these deals happen once you get the award. They also agree with the commonly accepted numbers. That's where it came from.
BJ, did you have any concerns on this? I know you had some questions that I never got to talk to you about.
No, mine was just about the pilot program itself, where the money was coming from, and who was getting it, who was paying and going on that, but,
Yeah, we're paying the money, and then you guys get to decide how it's used. Generally, the state would like to see it be used towards any initiative that can be accounted for. Well, technically, you can do it for many things, but that's what they usually prefer.
A housing project.
Yeah, housing is what I read. Yeah.
But there's ways around that legally, but it's not big enough money.
It's only, yeah, it's not enough money to be,
Fighting it.
we're not gonna be doing anything big with it. Certainly not building a housing project. Well, that's a nice idea. So, sir, when are you planning on, like, if you start this project, when are you gonna do that?
We have to begin work no later than November. And we're hoping to be working on it at least the months prior to that, but by regulation, we have got to begin work in November.
And how long does it take?
We plan it to be 16 to 18 months, depending on weather and other things. And we're starting in winter, so it limits the amount of work that can be done in the winter, so that's what we think, 16 to 18.
And the first part of this project is gonna be sure that you're building a foundation that no contamination can go through. That's the first thing that you're doing.
Sure, there are two components to the active remediation. And one is related to metals and organics and shallow soil left over from the old railroad to the north, basically it's coal ash and cinder. And which is easy for a layperson to understand. Coal ash and cinder is not particularly toxic, but it is more so that you wouldn't want to have children playing. So that's sort of the category that it falls into. And if this were being developed as an industrial site, you'd say, meh, but it is residential. So IDEM, Indiana Department of Environmental Management, requires us to provide protective measures. So there are two approaches that we will be taking. One, in some areas, it's high enough that we're better off digging it up and hauling it off to the landfill and replacing that soil with clean soil. And in other areas, we will cap it with a layer 2 feet of clean soil brought to the site. Some of that decision-making is also affected by grade issues. If you're adding 2 feet, you're raising grade in that area. So that integrates then with the redevelopment team's plans.
And we have to
Site.
dig and then fill. It just- but-
So, and integrating that with their cost and volume calculations and so forth. But those are the two fundamentals, that whatever is left of that coal ash and cinder will be covered by 2 feet of soil, or it will be paved over with asphalt, parking lot. I don't think any of them are being built over with the building.
The buildings are not being built over the contaminated area.
Not over the coal ash and cinder.
Okay.
The second remediation issue is from the solvents used at the site historically
Yeah.
over the course of half a century. And that's low-level stuff widespread across the western half or western 2/3 of the site. And the levels are such that any buildings, any structures, any occupied structures built in that area will have to have what are commonly called radon systems, because they originally started in, with people's concern about radon moving through the soil and moving into your house, radon gas. And now we're concerned about solvents from old, deep contamination moving up and into buildings. So the solution is that it's slab-on-grade construction, and you, at construction, have a series of holes in it with a small vacuum applied so that the pressure under the vacuum is always slightly lower than natural air. So air is always moving down rather than sometimes moving up. So that protects the interior of the building and ensures that any leftover solvent vapors don't move into the occupied spaces.
Thank you. I knew all that. I just didn't want to have to tell you.
I knew all that because I've heard it before. But, yes, I mean, as far as the pilot goes, we have time before our June 2nd meeting. I'm still, I don't know, I'm puzzled by the amount, I guess. I mean,
Would it make it comfortable if we show you how other deals have this, so other affordable housing projects in other cities all have pilot and it's generally the same formula, $500 per unit.
well, it'd make me feel real good if you just showed me how you figured yours into your project.
Oh, I mean, it's just an expense, so we plug in that expense so that it cash flows, so that, I mean, it's really a pro forma.
But again, I guess, you said the $100 is kind of the standard, but is that, so you're required to do the pilot, but is there a range within that pilot that typically, that pilot can be set at? I mean,
It's more about the project cash flowing for operations. Operations is what doesn't work here, so we can try to go higher, maybe, but the jeopardy here is, can this project be sustainable? And Keith mentioned that there's a whole industry that's gonna buy the tax credits. Tax investors are not gonna invest in a project that won't survive operationally because expenses are too high. So it really is, these things are not money makers. I'd love to do a market rate development here, but there's just no market for that. So the rents that this generates don't cover the operational expenses and the debt that it will still have to put the project together. So I guess to answer your question, it could be any number that the project can support, and this is the number that typically that is plugged in the general expenses and how other developers like ourselves, that's the sort of the standard that is asked
yeah.
across the industry, so, and then when the pro formas be put together, they just plug it in that way, 'cause there's a per unit cost.
Sure. But I'm, I mean, I've said here, and what'd you say, this is a $17 million project or something to that effect?
We want that because remediation is significant, so, in order to dig and grass,
Yeah,
put all the systems, it's over 20.
right. So if I looked into this and came to you next meeting and said, well, I think 15,000 a year is fair, that would make or break your project. $7,000 difference is going to make or break your project.
Probably not. Probably not. But we would have to change the incentive state, but we could probably work through that.
I just,
And we're open to that.
well, I'm just concerned because, I'll be honest with you, we did the Revere, we didn't do our homework on it. And it was another project similar to yours. They built homes throughout town and, we gave them a 10-year zero. They got a flat abatement like Susie's talking about over there, where they basically paid no taxes for 10 years. And in hindsight, we cheated ourselves. I know they could have done that project and made it feasible and still paid us some type of, I know that you guys are trying, the goal for you is to make money, but it's also the goal for us to give us some leeway to also be able to take a little bit of the burden off the rest of our community. You know, because we're going to have to provide additional services and whatnot throughout this development. It's going to be a great development, don't get me wrong, it really is. But I'm just trying to figure out, is $7,400 a year a fair number for the city of Logansport?
We can, that number as the standard, across these deals, could we just double it and still meet coverage? Probably.
I just want to jump in.
Yeah, I knew you wanted to say it. Come on up, Jacob.
Yeah, and I know, I'll say my piece at the council meeting too, but I'll just say that, you know, we've been kind of working with these guys since the beginning of, you know, trying to deal with this, what was a problem property for a long time. And now we're at the point where we still have some remediation to go if nothing else happens there. I mean, we're still on the hook for some level of work that needs to be done there if we don't do anything. And we have people that want to come in and spend, you know, however much of it is their own, spend, you know, 20 some million dollars on a property, and that's a problem for us, and pay us for the pleasure.
Yeah.
And so that's, I just wanted to keep that perspective on it.
And I agree.
I know what you're saying, I just wanted to make sure everybody, there's some new people here, you've seen some presentations of this over the years, but it's a really exciting thing, what a great thing for the area. I mean, it's actually better, I think, in some ways than what we initially thought with the size of the buildings and the way that this is facing.
Yeah.
So I'm really attracted to that, and I think this takes a huge problem off of our hands, and we get paid for it. And whatever the number shoots out to be, you know, for housing projects in the future, I don't know, it could be something that helps pay for the sidewalks at a future housing project like we're dealing with at Lexington Village or something like
Yeah.
that. So just other thoughts in the process.
And-
But yeah, we have until the June meeting, and there's a lot of time to talk about it.
You know, and I don't disagree with what he's telling you. I get all that, but I also know that every time we have a developer come in, and I'm not trying to be nasty, but I'm going to tell you, we get a lot more promises, and a lot of those promises seem to disappear because maybe the profit level doesn't end up where you guys want it to be. And I'm all about enterprise and people making money, but I'm also, you know, we sit down here and crunch numbers just like you do, and I'm just asking where the fair number in this all is.
When we see a pro forma, I can show it to you, and you'll see that this is not making a lot of money.
Yeah,
Definitely gonna be great.
well,
And I guess another reminder too, that all of the amenity space there is essentially going to be for the community. They're not going to be checking ID cards for the playground or things like that. So the extra money that gets spent there on this project is really a benefit to the whole area. I mean, the grass field there, I can imagine how many soccer games are going to end up played there before anybody has any money to do anything with it. So that's another consideration.
anyone else have any questions for these guys?
Total units are gonna be in all three phases. How many units?
Well, it will depend on what we do with phase 3 and whether we do, how many townhomes we stack, we release the force, but the goal would be to do another 3 buildings, 24 on phase 2, or at least 2 of them, depending on how the architects draw. And because of the parcels and the parking that we have faced, I think we know we can at least do 2. We'd like to squeeze in 3, but I don't know that this space will allow it. But we will do at least 2 more buildings if
Say it was 120 apartments in phase 1, is that correct?
72.
72?
So the site plan you're looking at potentially is another 48, 2 building, 24 each.
as soon as it's a state type of building. We may have to change it up in the application. Usually when you go for the application, you gotta change it up a little bit, so it might be a couple more units, a couple less. Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, we'll just start over there with Chris. Chris, you okay with moving this forward? Susie? Cam? Scott? BJ? Anybody? Okay. All right, we'll move this to the council meeting, and
Forward to suggestions.
On the name.
Careful, we're going to end up with a boating material space.
No, I just asked, don't put it out to the public or, it may, or, it's probably amongst yourselves, so my suggestion is what I would look for, but otherwise the public will go a little nutty on this.
Yeah. And Oscar, if you could send me your pro forma stuff, I'd love to take a look at that. Your pro forma stuff, if you could send that to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
This is the one we've all been looking forward to. You guys want to talk trash?
Now the excitement.
That's right. You might as well sit up here, Jacob.
I didn't want to
No, you go ahead.
presume.
I will kind of go over some basic stuff. We've had several meetings on this. I think I don't know that I missed anybody, but I put on there who basically had been meeting on this in the past. As you can see from what I sent you, we got 5 different bids. And we had a variety of different ways that they bid. As you can see on there, OnPoint did not have any bid for recycling at all. And Trash Cans didn't bid on the large items, but offered the sticker option. And then Republic, Green for Life, and Waste Management all basically bid across the board on everything. To summarize those 3, Waste Management's total bid came to $7,277,000. Green for Life's total came to $6,947,000. This is for 5 years. And then, Waste Republic, their total was $8,156,566. So if you look just across the board, Green for Life probably had the best overall bid. I don't know that there was any dispute about that in the committee. They also gave us a 7-year option, as did Republic. Waste Management's comment was, we'd talk about it towards the end of the 5-year contract, basically. They'd negotiate at that point.
I think they would negotiate in this contract phase, but they didn't give us a price for it.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
So anyways, we didn't get a number from them. We've kicked around ideas about different ways to do recycling rather than pay for recycling the way we've been doing it. We've kicked around the idea of large items being changed around to maybe having the street department help us out on that to avoid some of those costs. So basically, I think it came down to, in our minds, I think Green for Life was probably the best overall bid. If we want to continue with all 3 services as is, the first 3 years of the Green for Life contract would actually be at or below what we're paying now. So that we wouldn't have to look at any change in rates for probably the next 2 to 3 years, maybe. But eventually we would with whoever we went with if we go across the board. So I'll just kind of open it up to that. Jacob, you want to give them some of your thoughts on what you've talked about?
Yeah, I mean, so it became obvious that GFL, as long as they kind of answered some of our follow-up questions correctly, was the strongest bid. We had some folks check out their references. They came out very strong for the ones that they provided. And then the question becomes, what do we want to do on the options? I think is what's in front of us is what we want to do on the length of term, is how comfortable we are with going out beyond 5 years. Is it better to lock it in, or do you not want to hamstring people with that contract? And then, yeah, Dave teed it up there, the question of whether for the amount of money that we're talking about for recycling here and potentially for the bulk items too, is there a way for us to accomplish potentially close to the same thing, either utilizing the street department in some way, for that amount of money? Could we bring on another employee that helps out with some other things that we need? And as far as the recycling, you know, we've talked in the past about potential partnerships with county solid waste or some other ways to do this. And that's, you know, over the 5-year bid, the recycling piece is over $1.7 million. And then the large items for that amount of time is $362,000 plus. So you're talking, you know, $2 million for those items over 5 years. Over the 7 years, it's closer to $3 million for those 2 items. And with, my general thought is, with the things that are happening at the state level with property taxes and some of our other funding streams, that this may be a good time to not just lock in maybe a smaller increase over 5 to 7 years, but rethink this whole system and lock in a significant decrease over 5 to 7 years, and maybe work with some of our partners to try to explore different avenues for recycling and maybe reach a similar amount of acceptable recycling, so that we know, right now, if you throw your stuff in the recycling bin, if your neighbor throws a bunch of other junk in their recycling bin and it gets picked up, then that whole load may be contaminated. All of your stuff may not get recycled. It might end up in the landfill anyway. We're paying a significant amount of extra money with that occurring. And so the thought is, if we could, for a fraction of that amount of money, of that $3 million over the next 7 years, let's say, could we find ways with the street department to bring on someone else, have a manned recycling center that we can make sure doesn't get trashed like some of the county ones, but potentially partner with them on something that would benefit maybe not just the city but the whole county, and would guarantee that what you're taking there is actually getting recycled. It would add some burden, but it would significantly contain our cost over the next several years. And I know that there are going to be some ways to recover some of that revenue. I hope that some of our growth might be able to combat that over the next several years. We have a lot of really good things going on, but some of that growth doesn't necessarily hit the general fund either, which, you know, the property tax legislation does. And so thinking of ways to do that over the next several years, we have this contract in front of us now. I think it might benefit us to look at the trash-only option, potentially the trash and bulk option, and try to explore other avenues for recycling. But that's not a decision that I feel comfortable making just myself. You guys, you know, will have to budget for that over the next several years if you decide to do it or not to do it. And then the comment becomes, what services do we decide to go with, and how long do we want to lock it in? And then I'll open it to other comments. That's my thoughts.
I don't think we should be locked in longer than 5 years. When Republic came, they were nice, they were good. The management got involved in a couple of problems I had, solving neighborhood problems. Then there was a staff shortage, staff problem, I should say. I was missed maybe 20 times on my recycling. And they went to every other week, and that just confused me more. And when we had, 3 or 4 bridges under construction at the same time, it did cost us like an extra $1 million to pay them in gas.
I don't know.
It was substantial, I know that, because they had to stop and go way around.
I'm not sure that was in our term, maybe.
Uh-uh.
Utilities, they were doing all that work from like Michigan Avenue, and that's,
Yeah. I mean, the worst that happened was what we,
you lock something in for 7 years and stuff like that happens, you know, it's just continuing problems.
yeah.
With an option maybe to add 2 years at the end of the 5, I think that we should go that route.
And that's how our current contract actually was set up with Republic.
Okay.
So we had the opportunity to extend actually up to 5 years with Republic without going out to bid, based on our contract terms. We went to them and asked them to bring us a renewal offer, because we thought if we didn't send it out to bid, they might bring a more competitive offer. It was not in the realm of possibility, and so the next week we sent out bids, and the bid they came in with was lower than the offer that they gave us at renewal. So I think they knew they screwed up.
Yeah.
But, so that's one of the problems, is that, you know, we had locked in Republic for only 5 years, and we had the opportunity to renew with them. And because market changes over the last couple of years were what they were trying to make money back on what they perceive to have lost based on labor and gas and all that kind of stuff. That's the risk you run. Not locking it in is that, in 5 years, conditions have changed for the worse. But yeah, I think that's definitely, we can probably put a provision in the contract to negotiate with them at that time, for sure. I lean towards locking it in, but I definitely understand that.
Okay. We do need recycling too. I'm pro-recycle.
Now, are you, based on the cost and, the opportunity to, if we were able to do something like what the county did, they had their bins that you could take stuff to, they got trashed because they were unmanned.
Sure.
We were able to have it, in one of our facilities and monitored and something like that. Would that be an option that you would consider as
any
being-
option to keep it, sure.
Yeah, but as opposed to locking it in with this contract,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think we can
I
explore
would
other
rather do
options.
something like that. Yeah.
You got any thoughts over there?
But the price of the recycling, and just from hearing from drivers and stuff, the amount that doesn't get recycled, that just goes straight to the landfill, I've always thought it's a waste of money. But I think we need to have an option for people that truly want to recycle to take their recyclables too. So I'm for partnering, cutting that cost out of the budget and working with or partnering with somebody, figuring out another way for the recycling. So.
Because we're talking about, what is the yearly on the recycle? About $350,000 a year. So that's my thought, is that for that amount of money, I feel like we can figure something out. Even if we save half of that,
Yeah.
it's going to be worth it as we try to figure out how not to cut human positions here at the city when the property tax stuff hits, or not just continue to raise rates on people. Because that's the other thing, is we keep everything, we're either going to have to continue eating costs, or we're going to have to raise rates. And on top of everything else, we want to raise more stuff on people. This way, we can kind of save money, solidify our budget, at least on this front, and, do other things, and not just pass it on to the folks who maybe can't afford it,
Right.
with utilities and property taxes and everything else. So,
Well, I definitely think that we need to have a recycle program. And I think that recycling took a lot of years to get into people's lives. And people worked very hard to make that happen. And I'm not interested in doing away with recycling. I think it's very important. After being at these trash meetings, I do understand that not everybody recycles the same. I do understand that now. And I just, I'm all about saving money, and if you're talking about $350,000 a year, but you have to come up with a game plan that works. And there are a lot of people who, I know a lot of people don't recycle, but let's just say a lot of people do recycle, and those people aren't able to take their recyclables and drive 5 miles out of town or to some other facility. So in some ways, I think that discourages recycling because we're just not picking it up at their door. I don't know. I think recycling is been very hard to get into process, and if we can come up with a good solution, Jake, I'm all about it. I also think that from being at these trash meetings, that I do think the street department is really capable of doing our bulk item pickup. I do think that. I think we could get them on a schedule. We could let people know what the schedule is. And if they have to, we could save money there, even if you have to get another truck and you have to hire people to do it, you're still not going to be spending $362,000 a year picking up large bulk items. So
or if you are, it's for a staff member that can do a bunch of other things for the street department, not just that. I agree with you.
Yeah, right, yeah. So I think that is I do think both of those ideas are good ways to save money. I just don't know if you go back to GFL and tell them, we accept your contract, but we're not accepting your contract for large items and recycling, Do they still want to pick up our trash?
We asked them that question ahead of this meeting, and they said they would accept a trash-only bid at the price that they gave us.
That they gave us?
Yes. So we
Okay.
asked that question of everybody, trash cans,
Yeah,
Kelly
I-
Wagon responded, yes, they would.
Yeah, but we
And Waste Management responded and said they would not. They would have to redo
Their
their bid for
bid,
trash.
okay.
GFL said their bid for trash stands as it is.
Okay.
Large items, I mean, for clarity, that 362 was 5 years, so
So what is that a year then?
72,000 a year is what it's costing us.
How many people take advantage of that? I don't really know.
I use it, I use it every once in a while. I don't know, it's hard.
Once or twice a
It's-
year.
It's hard to know the specific tonnage. It's a great, I will say that it's a great resource for code enforcement because they can tell people that don't know, like, hey, you left this out a week too early or a week too late. This is when you're supposed to do it, and get picked up for free. So that's been a real resource. But I think we could accomplish the same thing if we're saying the street department will pick it up at the end of the month if you leave it in your alley.
Of the yearly calendar.
It'll still work just fine. Yeah,
Right.
but that's where the main benefit is. I use it every once in a while. To say I've never gone over to my neighbors and added an extra one when I have 3, but I think that's the benefit, but we can accomplish pretty much the same thing for either the same money or less, and if it's the same money, then at least we're paying somebody local to do some other things for the street department maybe when he's not doing that. So, I think it'll take some work, but we definitely have to dive into, if we're going to do away with some of the things, we have to dive into the programming, and I definitely welcome your leadership on that, on the recycling part too, on, kind of keeping us accountable as you will in doing that, because we have to. If we decide to do that, we have to figure out how to make it work, and I think we can. I think we can. I think there's opportunity there. What else do you guys think? Fun stuff.
I do like the partnering with like the street department and maybe solid waste or something. I just worry I don't want to overload the street department because we did just cut that one position, and split up that pay among the other employees. And then if we need to add that back, how does that play out?
Well, they said they would have to hire someone.
Like I was telling, I brought this up in the last meeting, I don't think you were here, so you were at your son's closing that day, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'd have to do some creative budgeting with the street department, because basically MVH is at a place where the revenue and the expenses are basically even right now, maybe even a little, because in order to use your community crossings, you have to put half of some of the money that you get into that fund, so it takes it away from payroll and your day-to-day needs. But I think we have options. We just have to look into them as we got closer. But it can be done.
We talked about, we're getting more money in the host fund. That's one of the areas. If we're getting more money in there and we go about the trash a different way, we'll be spending less money out of there than we even are now.
Right.
And so there'd be some opportunities to talk
Yeah,
about what we're doing, bring somebody on or something
Yeah.
different, maybe utilizing that fund.
We've actually been using the host fund because it makes the most sense to buy large equipment and stuff the last few years for the street department, like those beds they bought for their dump trucks, those were paid for out of the host community this year.
I wondered, I wasn't at the last meeting, but I would have asked, is it possible the trailers they have, when they come around to pick up your brush and large yard items, like, can they use those trailers to do this bulk idea?
I don't see why not.
Something that's sat relatively close to the ground, you wouldn't want to be trying to put them up in the back of a dump truck.
Yeah,
And buying a trailer is a lot less expensive than buying a truck.
exactly. I think.
Well, and you could, and conceivably, if, let's say we needed to hire an extra guy or two, you can hire them as a laborer, and they're not they're not a license to drive the dump truck, so they're basically, Chad was what they called a laborer. So Chad made considerably less than the other guys because he never drove the dump trucks. He didn't want to drive them. So that's,
The bulk and maybe
Yeah.
mow every time, if
They
you
could-
need it every once in a while.
yeah, so there are alternatives, and we'd have to look at those as we budgeted. Scott, you got any other thoughts on any of this?
No, not right now.
BJ, what do you think, buddy?
Would we be switching to the larger containers? Or do we?
I think that with this contract, because we'd be switching companies, initially, everyone would get the 96-gallon containers. I haven't had this conversation with GFL specifically, but most other people, if somebody requests it, they can accommodate doing a smaller one at that time. But because we've had Republic for the last couple of contracts, they didn't switch everybody's out unless somebody asked them to. So if you
Right.
asked for the bigger one, you got it. If you didn't, you still have the brown one or the smaller Republic one or whatever.
Yep.
This one would start out with everybody at the same size, 96-gallon, the big one. So it'd just be one big 96-gallon trash tote for everybody, which would be nice because I notice in a lot of our code enforcement things, for some of you guys that come to Board of Works, first thing we spot is that the people that have trash laying around have the brown trash can still,
Smaller.
which is smaller. And so Randy just, every time he tags somebody, he starts them on the process of getting the bigger one.
The homeowner would also have to take out both containers for this. Like, I gave my recycle bin back a year ago, so I don't want it.
If, so, it, I mean, it honestly depends. It's not gonna change the price for anybody. If we go with everything, you'll get both containers the way that it is now. If you go with just trash, you'll get one container, and, yeah, I don't know. Just kind of depends on where we go there, but if you decide you don't want to do the recycling, I'm sure they would take it back. That's fine now, but it won't change the price.
Well, Jake, you said that when we get the new contract and we get the new dumpsters for everyone, you said you were gonna send somebody around to pick up the ones that didn't get picked up. That was your game plan.
It's a possibility if they're left in the city right of way for enough time.
Yeah, that's what you
We
said.
might view them as an obstruction and take them somewhere away, definitely.
Yeah, and that's a great idea.
I think it sounds good. I've never heard of this company before. I mean, besides reading through this stuff, have they done some like similar cities? to
They're
us?
doing Fort Wayne, aren't
Fort
they?
Wayne, I think, I'd have to look at their references, but I think Huntington was one of
Huntington.
them. They've picked up some Indiana business recently, but they are the third, GFL is, they might have bought a local, maybe a local company, but they're the third largest company, I think, behind Republic and Waste Management that does this in the country. So they're just doing some aggressive bids to take some business away, I think. Well, it works out for us, I guess. We came to bid at the right time.
That's what I think too.
Have they also looked at each of the homeowners buying their own containers, just using their service?
That is not something that we've talked about. It's always something that could be considered, but probably not, just because it's more efficient for them to know who they're supposed to be picking up and not picking up. Especially this company, because they're going to be brand new here unless they have any legacy business. They're going to know exactly who's on their service and who's not on their service. Republic has some iffy legacy business even that you don't know sometimes. If they're a triplex, let's say, instead of a duplex, you don't know if they're on our service or not sometimes. But it's easier for them, I think, to provide that and do that. And they still own those, so at the end, they're able to take them and do all that kind of stuff. But, yeah, if they, got them with their name on it.
And there's an ordinance that says, the people that we won't do trash for, and what is that rule for, rentals, is it?
Yeah, if it's more than 2 units.
If it's more than 2 units, then they have to figure out how to do their own trash. We don't do that for them. The city doesn't provide that. So if you have a rental that has 3 units in it, we're not doing your trash. So I'm thinking about that because you're talking about people paying for their own, bin. And I think people already feel like they pay enough money for trash, so I don't think we should ask them to
Yeah.
pay.
Now, that could be something, look, we could go to them and say, we don't want to pay for recycling, since you're already running in the area, what would it cost to add that on to additional households or something like that, for them to do on an additional service, I know some people put in their bids the option to not purchase, but pay for an additional trash bin. Let's say you have too much for your big one, you could pay, I think somebody put in the bid, it was like $8 to put a different one on there. I don't think
That's
GFL did that. I think if we wanted to incorporate that into the contract, we probably could, but right now, no, they'll just they'll own the bins, they'll all be the same GFL bins, it'll probably look really nice and uniform. Then from there, we can figure things out maybe.
Do we know where our recyclables go at this point?
The recycling? It goes to, I don't know if it's Frankfurt or Indianapolis.
Our recycling goes to Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it gets taken to a place where, like, several other community stuff all gets taken. They all get put into one big thing, so it all gets mixed in with everybody else's.
And that's
from
where they
there,
break it down.
it's, rejected or not rejected, and it really depends on, sometimes it depends on market prices. If it's more expensive to clean than it is to sell on that particular week, then they'll, or more expensive to landfill than sell, then they'll do that. So it's a very, week to week business in recycling too, so it just really depends.
Yeah, but if you ask them, they tell you that your recyclables are going to
Going to
Indianapolis because I've
That's
asked
what they
them.
told us last
Telling
week.
us that before, during the Fincher administration, they followed the trucks, and some of them were going to the landfill,
Yeah.
being just dumped.
Yeah, well, ultimately, as soon as they take everything, it all belongs to them, so we're kind of, it's all a trust game anyway, and that's why I think if what we're really concerned about is getting more of our stuff recycled that can be recycled and making sure the people doing it right are getting some type of benefit for doing that,
Sure. Good.
then it maybe makes more sense to do some of those manned, so you know exactly what's getting brought every time, and I think we can do that for less than $350,000 a year. That's my opinion.
Okay.
So you guys want to talk about this in a meeting again? Because we're going with a new company, we will need to probably get them going sooner rather than later, so I don't want to rush anybody, but I don't know how you.
Here would be what I was thinking the recommendation could be, Jacob. I believe that everyone is in agreement maybe that we go with GFL, Green for Life. They're across the board the cheapest.
That's what, one question I'll ask. Everybody who was in the committee that did everything, they all agreed with the,
I think they were all in
Same.
consensus.
It shifted pretty quickly
I just
to,
hope they did
okay,
more
what are we going to
research,
do?
obviously, than
Yeah.
what I.
And like you said, we checked into their references and didn't have any issues with any of that. What we could do is, what I'd like to do is maybe go tell GFL we're going to award them the bid, but we want to sit down and talk with them about the three, some of the things that were brought up we could discuss with them, and maybe they might have some ideas we haven't thought about as far as how could we cheapen the price of recycling or the bulk pickup, and then we could bring that recommendation back to the council again. But I think they're all wanting to hear something from us. Green for Life has messaged me probably half a dozen times, and I keep telling them we haven't made a decision yet.
I'm glad they have your number, because they're one of the only ones that hasn't.
Sometimes when you run into people, it's not as lucky as you think. But anyway,
Potential to just have them come in for a presentation, rather than tell them that we're thinking about giving them the bid.
I think we're at a point where we're either going to hire them to do it all, or we're going to hire them for a portion of it. I think that, is anyone in disagreement with that part of it? I think it's time to really get them interested. They may have more options available if they know we're the real deal.
Well, and a couple important facts on them. They were the lowest bidder on every individual item. They answered exactly like they were supposed to, gave us the 5-year and the 7-year options. They answered our clarification questions, which we should have had to ask, but they did tell us that their trash bid was good as is because other people did not.
Well, we were concerned that people wouldn't be, and we found out that was the case with a couple of them.
Exactly.
Did
And
you
then-
look at like the 20-page presentation that they sent us? They sent us like a 20-page presentation.
Yeah, you could check that.
Oh,
And Scott, you can check in there, they have some references too, and it's all them. But, yeah, I mean, that's really all that we're at right now. I don't know, I mean, so would it be reasonable to think about doing a bid awarding at next week, Board of Works, and then scheduling a time for them to come to the city council, and so that we can let everybody else know, let them know that we're gonna enter a negotiation on the contract, and then we talk about, you know, whether we want the 5-year or the 7-year, and then what some other options might be contractually. I don't know if, is that
Yeah, the contract-
Is that executive session, if we're talking about contract stuff? I don't know.
Do you have to have it finalized for Board of Works?
Yeah.
You have to have it all
Yeah, we-
finalized for Board of
No,
Works?
well, we'd have to have the contract finalized, but we can essentially award the bid and then start negotiating with them, because there's always that, you award the bid and then there's the contract phase too.
Okay.
So there's those two steps.
Does any of this require a public meeting, Dave?
Oh, yeah. Well, the
Yep.
Board of Works meeting will be public. I mean, that'll be advertised, and so we'll advertise the bid awarding
Okay,
for next week, and then, I mean, if you guys want to have the next meeting with them public, or if there's an executive session, that might be better.
Probably have to have, I mean, we can do that meeting however you like, but I'm gonna have to have another finance meeting for, we got a resolution for the grant application that we have to run through yet, and it wasn't prepared in time for tonight, so,
So
for the
whatever-
memorial
for the
home
memorial home?
grant.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure that people, I mean, changing your trash company is a big deal, and I want people to know that we're doing it. I want them to know that we're discussing, we're changing your bulk pickup, we could possibly be changing your recycling program, and I want people to have the opportunity.
This was a public meeting as well,
To-
that it was on the agenda.
Yeah.
Exactly. I understand that, but I just would like to have, I don't know.
I agree.
I just want people don't come to committee meeting.
I think they'll be more open to answer our questions, knowing that we've already decided to go with them. We just need to crunch out the details.
Yeah, we're just working on how to lower, value.
Right.
Now, would they give, like the police, the fire department, their own special signs? I'm looking at here and all this, a 30-yard roll-off for the street.
So
There's a list of them here.
List of them, BJ.
and that's
Yeah, list.
identical to what was put in the bid specs for the last time around, so everybody should keep their current service. If they need something different, that's something that we can address at the time, but at minimum, they'll be keeping exactly what they have now. We put provisions in there that included additional large dumpsters in case we wanted to do any community cleanups, or if we needed to use those dumpsters to accommodate our new bulk pickup service that we're doing with the street department, we'll have that opportunity to kind of use the contract to our advantage there.
Found them.
All right. Well,
Okay, so I'm going to make a recommendation to announce that we're going to,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you guys have any other questions ahead of the next time we get together, any other info we'll send, but we can ask them and try to get the answers ahead of time.
they're more than, they've let me know they're more than willing to come and speak to us about any of this, so. Okay, it is.
Do we need to talk about a name for the apartment? Like, we're being recorded.
I need more time.
Why did you know that had to be?
No.
Haley,
I think you go with whatever you say, Haley.
at this point, we'll just do whatever you tell us.
That's on general, that was the Vandalia yard, right?
I do want to say I wasn't crazy about Storyville, but I wasn't going to bring it up.
Yeah.
Since you brought it up, I'm all about it. That just
I like the
sounds,
story better now that it was, I thought it was just like a spin the wheel and
Yeah.
pick a name thing. Yeah, but the story was a little better, but
I think Storyville just sounds kind of,
they'll work on it.
Thoughts on general, unless anybody comes up with anything better in the next day.
I love that. I think it sounds.
Unless that's a problem with their grant, just because it was the other application.
Right, I don't want them to do a town work or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flats on
I-
Washington.
Right. I just don't want to cause them a lot of work over.
Garden, that's better. It's off of Garden.
What did you say?
It's off of Garden, flats on Garden.
Oh. Well, I really like General Street because everybody knows that area as General Street. So I really do like that idea. Flats on General. I think that sounds like I want
Flops
to
on
move there and
General,
I've got a
whatever
nice house.
I love it.
Generalville Apartments. I love it.
Okay, can I adjourn now?
Morris Manor.
I got one of that, I know, I got John Street Manor. I closed the meeting at 7:17.
Leave